Hey friends, how are you all doing tonight? I'm so excited about our review. We've got a lot of people here and we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I did post over in the chat on the side a little link. If you guys wanna give me a thumbs up, check in, say hi. That's gonna be how you get all of our stuff today. So it's gonna be super exciting. So go ahead and jump on in. Just like last time, I'm operating it on another screen so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing on mine. But I wanted you to have access to it as well. Super exciting. Okay, so I am Stephanie Kirk, and we're going to go through tonight and do some reviews. So I was putting this together, and the fall semester is amazing. As a teacher, it rushes by and it's so fast. And then when I'm putting together this review, there's so much stuff to cover and so little time to cover it. So I have a lot of resources here for you, and Nearpod is going to let it be a little bit more interactive. So everybody can have the comments and we can post on it. And on your screens, you should be able to actually activate the notes. So if you go up to the top corner, you should see a little black arrow. When you hit that little black arrow, it's going to let you activate your notes. It'll give you a copy of the slide deck. And of course, I will send you an email after our slide review so that you can get all of that information. So are you guys super excited to get started? I know I am. Okay. So, of course, this is another stream brought to you by Think Probable. This is our fall semester review stream. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, and we're going to get started. If you're not following us on social media, I hope you start because we have so much stuff happening. These are the fall reviews. So you can see what else coming, what else going to start. I think tonight, this is the last one for tonight. We've got so much coming with Thursday and Monday and Tuesday. I think that falls right in alignment with the semester exams, at least for us it does. So that is super exciting. I do have a little challenge for you tonight, though. I wanted to come up with a way to make this a bit more entertaining. So I talked to the Fiveable crew, and we have a prize pack for the most creative visual representation of what you have learned in tonight's review. So if you can create some sketch notes or use some kind of other visual representation, show us what you got out of tonight's review, post it on Twitter, go ahead and @ThinkFiveable and at Kirk's Corner, and we're gonna come in, we're gonna look at all of those, and let's say by like Friday, does that sound good? Okay, so prize pack for the magical winner for visual representation by Friday. So super excited about that. How do you guys feel? That seem fun? Neat little thing? I thought it would be fun. And I love sketch notes too. All right, so on the agenda tonight, we're gonna review so much that it really felt kind of fragmented to give this detailed agenda. So I kind of categorized it. We're gonna do super fast test reminder. We're gonna do some AP reading in general information that we've talked about and we've learned. And then we're gonna go back over the multiple choice expectations. We're gonna talk a little bit about the strategies that we discussed here. We're gonna jump over into AP writing, and then we're gonna look at those FRQs as well. So I have some resources, I've got some collaboration boards, and any questions that you guys have, I want you to kind of put these up here because they're important to us, and we want to make sure that we are helping you because that's why we're here. We're here because we believe in you, and we know that you can get that 5. We're just going to get there with you. So, open-ended question. Are you ready? Given that this is a review, what is a specific learning intention or a success criteria that you might have for yourself? Because it's hard for me to come up with one general idea except that we're going to study and review. So what do you hope to get out of tonight's stream? So take just a minute. What do you hope that you get out of tonight's stream? And then just hit submit whenever you got it for me so I can make sure I meet your needs. I love seeing everybody log in and working. It's so fun. Okay, starting to see some great ideas. A little bit more about developing a clear thesis statement that's defensible. and struggling with that with synthesis. That's a very valid point, and I'm going to make it a point to come back and address that when we get into that synthesis aspect. But I want you to think of synthesis as like an argument essay, okay? Very different from the rhetorical analysis, especially in terms of reading. Better tips and strategies for the midterm and the AP exam. I'm curious, Ashley, do you know what the midterm is going to look like? Is it going to be a released AP exam from the past? Currently, right now, there's actually not an AP College Board full-length AP Lang exam. So we were just talking about that actually with a College Board webinar that I was attending to feel a little bit more ready. Hopefully, we can get you there. Learning how to read. We're definitely going to talk about reading and the understanding of it. Rhetorical strategies. Okay, so we're going to look not at specific strategies and devices, but I will make a list for you. I've got a Quizlet on here that we can get for you, and I can send some resources to it. The reason is because AP College Board no longer requires that the device is specifically named. And I know a lot of teachers in the forum have kind of been going back and forth with that, but that is something that we're going to look at there. Row B of the rubric. Do you guys remember what row B is? What a coincidence. We're going to talk about row B tonight. So we're going to look at that one with your evidence and your commentary, making sure you get there on that. John, I see you. I see your comment. I'm not really sure what that is. You can DM me on Twitter. I can do all sorts of things. So I can do whatever I can to help you with that. I'm sure that you're not the only one who's feeling like you're a little bit behind with the AP guidelines and with what's expected. So we can definitely work on that. We will 100% talk about the free response questions tonight and then go into a little bit more detail on the rhetorical analysis essay. So a lot of these, fantastic. I love that we're going to look at these. Okay, so are you ready to get started? Now, it's very important to always start with a goal for yourself, and communicating it to me helps me to move on. So you ready? Here we go. All right, so make sure that you have the date saved. I know at our school, our students have already made the payment for the test. So check with yours. They have to be ordered like super early this year. Some schools may pay for it all in advance. Some may do payments throughout the year, but that testing date is May the 13th. You've got your pre-registration. Make sure that your payment dates are done. Make sure that you've got your arrival time and that you know where the place is. If you come late, I'm sorry that you came late. If you get a break in the middle and you don't make it back from the break in time, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get in. So make sure that you're communicating with your school, with your teacher, and that you know what's expected of that test. So take a moment, if you haven't done it yet, get your handy dandy little cell phone and put this date in there, okay? All right. Now, I am going to speed you through 3 resources that I think everyone should have, okay? So the first one that we're going to look at, are you ready? This is why Nearpod is magical. So those of you who are in the Nearpod, it's going to actually open up for you. Are you ready? Okay. If you click on that link, it's going to open in a new tab for you. This is the course and exam description. So this is the big long book that the teachers get that kind of go through and help figure it out. It's available free online, so I don't feel like I'm giving you anything that you shouldn't have. I actually think it's really good for you to go through, read it, and annotate it. When I first started teaching, I actually offered extra credit to my students for doing that because it's going to give you so much information that's just going to help you understand what you're doing. So yay, I'm so glad it opened for you. Okay, so next resource for you. Of course, it's the website. If you aren't using it, you should be. I think it has so much information on there. It will have some, of course, the rubrics have changed and we have the stable prompts for the writing, but you have old sample essays, and let's face it, good writing is good writing. Whether it's a 9-point rubric or a 6-point rubric, you're going to be doing really well with that, okay? So you want to make sure that you have access to this, and I wanted to give you the access to it as well. And you should have AP Classroom with your teacher as well. If they haven't gotten you started on it, they probably will here in the near future. And if you're not sure, just feel free to ask. It's new technology. And when it first came out, there were some problems with it. So a lot of teachers were kind of hesitant But it's really grown on me, and I think that my students like it too now. So feel free to ask if you're not getting that. Okay, the next one is the big frowny face. It's so devastating when we get this big frowny face, but fortunately for you, I have a backup plan. All right, so I will get that link for you. This is a vocabulary source. Did this one open for anybody? We'll get this link to you and send that out as well. This is a vocabulary source using the vocabulary from the course and exam description. So we don't look at a lot of vocabulary, but I think that this is pretty helpful for just kind of knowing where you are. So I've got it right here. Click this little button. I'll put the link to this in the chat just to make sure that you can have it. I want you to have it. There you go. That should work. I don't know why it didn't work before. Sorry. That frowny face is so sad too, isn't it? It's like, no, not going to work for you. Okay. So those were the testing reminders and just a few resources that I think are going to really help you be prepared for the test. You guys feel a little bit better about that? All right, we're going to jump in and talk about AP reading. How in the world do I read all of this? And I don't have time. And everybody tells me that I need to read it 3 times to really understand it and make sense. But first things first, you're laughing, but you know it's true. It's like, that's where I'm at too. So you just got to get what you can get. Instead of focusing on what you don't know, focus on what you do know. Figure it out. Find a few parts from up here and down here and over here and maybe on the back of the page and see what happens. Okay? All right. So the Canons of Rhetoric. I think this is a great foundational place to look at. Of course, it's based on Aristotle's principles, and you have these divisions of the rhetorical process. So the style is what language is used to shape and convey the message. Invention, the elements of context that inform the message and how that mode shapes the message. Arrangement, that's the structure of the argument itself. Memory, that's going to be the prior knowledge that's related to the topic. And then the delivery, the presentation, the argument, stylistic choices, writing conventions, everything down to what they wear realistically. Okay? So, we got a quick question. Yes, I will. So the question was, will I make sure that you guys have the slide deck? Yes, you will get the slide deck. If you're using that Nearpod link, it should, if you hit the little arrow up on the top on the right-hand side in student view, it should let you, you'll have that access to. So, all right. Okay, that. All right, so we've answered that question. Moving on. Are you ready? Okay. Big ideas and enduring understandings. This is what is meant by mode. I'm so glad to see you back again. Thanks for joining us. So when we look at mode, we have a lot of different modes that we're going to address. And tonight, we're actually going to talk mostly about the modes of development. It's sort of like the technique that's used for it. Some people talk about rhetorical modes. They call it the modes of development. It's going to be like the structure that it's built into. But I definitely have a flashcard activity for us with that in here. So, all right. Big ideas and enduring understandings. Rhetorical situation. You want to make sure that we understand the situation and the strategic choices that are based on that situation. So all of those pieces kind of come together. You've got to be able to identify and describe the rhetorical situation, and then they actually give us these specific terms: exigence, audience, writer, purpose, context, and message. So we've got all of those we want to make sure that we address. Now, on top of that, we have to understand how the argument demonstrates the understanding of the audience's beliefs or values or their needs. Because if you know something about your audience, you're going to be able to work toward what they have or what they want, and you're going to be able to get the desired audience movement. You also should be working on writing introductions and conclusions that are appropriate to your purpose and your context. And then, of course, demonstrating an understanding of your audience's beliefs and values and needs as well. So these are kind of the big ideas that we've looked at so far this semester here at Fiveable and using those suggested units as well. So, you guys familiar with this? Yeah? Okay. Give me like 2 seconds and then we're going to do hopefully something kind of fun here. All right, so Pullman's model for argumentation. First, you've got to start with the claim. That's the point that's being made by the speaker, okay? And then you've got to have evidence. So your evidence is the grounds on which the argument is believed to be true. Believed to be true, because it has to be arguable, right? That defensible thing. So sometimes they'll call it the reason or the grounds or the data or the support, but oftentimes we recognize this as like the because element, okay? This is true because of this. The next piece that you want to make sure that you have when you are producing an argument or when you're trying to analyze the argument of a given text is the warrant, okay? This is often implied. It's the thing that the speaker assumes the audience is going to agree upon. Okay, so it's the piece, it's the sense that makes the because make sense. Now that sounds kind of weird, but let's say, for example, my money has been stolen. That's my claim. Well, why would you think your money has been stolen? My money has been stolen because it's no longer in my wallet. Okay, well, that gives us evidence. It was in the wallet, it's not in the wallet. Obviously, it has been stolen. The warrant is the piece that says, you know, money can't walk. So it's not like it just got out of your wallet on its own. Something had to help it out. We don't have to imply that piece, but that's the warrant. That's the backing, okay? So it's the assumption or the bridge. Now, how many of you guys have ever like lost money out of your back pocket? So I see over here the idea of a claim of fact. It's presented as a claim of fact, my money was stolen. But it may not actually be a fact. What if I just forgot that I spent it? Or what if my son grabbed it out of my wallet today and I didn't know that? So it's not always 100% fact, but it is presented as fact, okay? Another question, in debate, a warrant is why the argument is true. Yes, so these are the recommended terms from Pullman. And this is based on the language of composition book, or if you have the language and composition book, then this is kind of what they look at there. So the claim is the big picture. This is the point that you're trying to make. And the evidence is going to be the grounds on which that claim is true. The warrant is the piece that makes the evidence work. So kind of what you see here is when your teachers tell you that you want to have your evidence and you want to have that commentary and that analysis, that's where you're going to see the evidence and the warrant, okay? All right, the next piece would be a counter or a concession. Sometimes they will give a little bit. Well, yes, it's true that my money might have fallen out of my pocket, but that's never happened before, and my wallet has a magnetic strap, okay? So you can kind of see the way that you would address the other side in a way that helps your claim. All right. Hey, Brandon, thanks for jumping in there. Nice. Okay, so when we kind of move right along, I have a question for you. Are you ready? I'm going to try to time it, and I want to remind you, we just talked about argument. Are you ready? This crazy lady does this stuff in her classroom too. In a fight between a tiger and a polar bear, who would win? Who would win? I got you, Anna. It is GSDQV. I'll link up here too. I can repost. I love this. This is so fun. All right, you ready? Ready? Here it comes. Here it comes. Okay, your time is up. So we're looking here at the idea of argument. You remember that, right? Okay, so here's an example. The tiger. So here's my claim, the tiger. The polar bears are emaciated from the ravages of climate change. So that would be my evidence. My warrant is the fact that it's emaciated means that it can't go back and fight that tiger. So you kind of see that as an example. Here's another one. Are you ready? See, you never know what you're going to get with Fiveable. I should have asked whether it would be the pirate or a ninja that would win. That would have been fun too. Here we have, I think the tiger would win because the tiger has sharper claws than the polar bear. I have a claim. The claim is the tiger would win. But I wonder, what is the effect of the use of I think? If we take away I think, what happens to the quality of your argument? Sounds more authoritative, doesn't it? So we want to think on that kind of as we move through as well. All right, one more and then we're going to move on. Are you ready? Are you ready? Here we go. Claim, the polar bear would most likely win. I love that qualifier because I didn't address qualifiers when we were kind of reviewing that really quickly. But a qualifier, in a lot of ways, it's like a way of saying, yeah, most likely this is what's going to happen. Sure, it's possible it's not going to, but here's this deal. So although tigers are typically regarded as faster animals, polar bears have more muscle mass and stamina in long conflicts. Note the use of although tigers are typically regarded as faster animals. That's when you are addressing the other side of the issue here. Tigers may have more advantageous features, such as sharp claws, teeth, etc., but polar bears' mass presents them as a greater opponent. Okay, so look at that anytime that you're kind of writing. Think about your claim, your evidence, and the warrant. So the more explanation you give, the greater the commentary and the analysis that you provide. That's going to be that row B that you guys were asking about. So super excited to move on. All right. Okay, so do you remember your modes of development? In some school districts, in fact, even in ours, this is often called text structure. It's called text structure. So if you hit that little blue arrow up on your screen, then you are able to match your cards. Can you match them? See what you got. See what you remember. So you have the term, and then you have a description of what that term is. Super fast there, huh? Okay. So someone earlier asked about modes, and so we kind of see these examples in text. Now, you might have a dominant mode over the text as a whole, but what about the power of using a different mode for each part? Now, typically the mode is going to match the purpose. What you want to do is going to be determined based on how you do it, right? Yes, but if you look at these and you bring in some narration, you can tell a story to kind of prove a point, or you can define something. You can say, this is what this is, or this is what this is not. And so that's another good strategy that you can use to build and increase the quality of your writing as well. So these are things that you can find in other texts that exist as well. So you can find a section where they address the causes and the effects. You might find a section where they're comparing this event to this other event. So you have all of these pieces that kind of come into play along the way. So don't worry, you'll have these cards as well, so you can study them too. Okay, so the rhetorical situation. Everything is intentional. every rhetorical choice, all of it. Because if you think about it, I think Annie Lamont does this text called Crappy First Drafts. It's actually not called Crappy First Drafts, it's another word. But her whole point is that if you are writing and you kind of do that regularly and you have an idea of what you're doing, your pacing is spread out. So you can have your crappy first draft where you're kind of putting your ideas together and you're working it out, and then you build it and you modify it. And that when you get something to publishing, whether that publishing is clicking submit on Google Classroom or printing it out and delivering it to your professor, that publication piece is the best that you have. You've checked everything, you've double checked, you've revised, you've done all of that. So every single thing that you allowed or didn't allow in that paper is a rhetorical choice. It's the same thing with these other texts. So we talked about the rhetorical situation in terms of this big idea of the occasion or the exigence, the purpose, and the context. And then, of course, in the middle, we had the speaker and the audience and the subject, and then those little appeals. And you guys have promised all of us that you're not going to write an essay only on ethos, logos, and pathos. You're still going to keep that promise, right? Perfect. So, key definitions here. And once again, you guys are going to get all these slides, and I do have a Quizlet that I'm going to give you the link to as well. So, a text is considered any cultural product that's being considered or investigated. The context is what's going on in the world at the time that it happens, historically, socially, culturally, whatever's going on at that time period. And you want to try to get as much as you can out of the text. And fortunately, AP College Board's really good to you, and they're going to give you that introduction before the text that gives you some information to help you along the way. The occasion is the special circumstance, atmosphere, attitude, and all of the events that come around that. But the most important part of the occasion is the exigence, because it's the urgency that leads to the action. It's the thing that makes what you're doing change. Now, that's a term that in several of my streams here at Fiveable and in my classroom, students have struggled with. So I like to explain it like this. I want you to think of a song that comes on the radio, one that like you know the one I'm talking about, right? So if it comes on the radio and you're in the car by yourself, then it's totally fine. It doesn't matter. You might actually turn the volume up and sing every single word along with it, right? But if your mom is in the car, or maybe your 3-year-old niece, you're probably not going to play that song because you want to shelter them and you don't want them to think less of you. So you change the channel, you turn the volume down. Whatever that action is, you could have left it playing, but something changed and forced you to do something different. And so that's a good idea of exigence. All right, purpose. This is a big one. It's the goal that the speaker wants to achieve. Everything's an argument, but it's not just to sell a book and it's not just to make money. So I always tell my students, go for something else. Dig deeper than that. Are you with me? Okay. A little bit more. The speaker is obviously the person or the group who creates the text. You got to remember the speaker isn't always the writer. In today's world, we do have speech writers that we employ on a regular basis. The persona is the mask that is shown to the audience, okay? So I want you to think the difference between who the speaker is in real life and who they are when they are delivering that message, because that can change regularly. Think about the way that politicians might be different, or think about you, the way you speak to, I don't know, your grandmother versus the way you speak to your little brother when he just barged in the room and you were in there with your girlfriend, okay? So little examples like that. The audience, of course, is the listener, the viewer, the reader, all of those things. It's typically going to be presented in a way that they are going to understand. So the big thing to think about here is you might have a primary audience, but sometimes there's a secondary audience, and that can be intended, like they are going to give a speech at this convention, everyone at this convention is going to have it, but then we're going to publish this speech and audio later. Sometimes it's unintentional. You know, like those viral videos of people fighting in Walmart, that sort of stuff. So you have your primary audience, but you also have a secondary audience. And that's true with the older texts as well. So questions on any of those things? All right. Okay. So here is the Quizlet link. Now, this has so many terms on it, and the reason is because these are all of the terms that you're going to find in the current version of the course exam description and in the old version of the course and exam description. And then it has terms from the language and composition textbook. So this is going to kind of help you out. Now, in my class, I don't do a lot with devices. I expose them to the words. We talk about a few of them. I like to point them out by name when I see them by name. I love it when my students recognize it by name, but it's too much of a gamble to call it something and then be wrong and it not be that thing. So you guys were wanting some vocabulary and some devices. So here you go. All right. So AP reading, that's a lot. What questions, comments, concerns? What do you have? What are your thoughts? What do you think? Okay, 2 questions popped up just then. We have, how's it different for reading when you're reading with synthesis? When we are reading for synthesis, we're not looking at the rhetorical choices. We're looking at what is the argument being made. So you want to kind of break it down there. Another question actually had pop up in two places. What is the best way to begin answering a multiple choice question? So we're going to get to that here in a little bit. My big thing with multiple choice, what I tell my students is you're going to have the passage on this side and the question on this side. And so if you read the passage and answer these questions, when you flip, you just annotate on this passage as well, because the passage is going to repeat so that you don't have to flip back and forth those pages. And that sounds so confusing as I kind of listen to myself, but you'll understand it kind of when you get to see a sample because they actually repeat the passage on it. All right, effective annotation. I see that one twice. So when we annotate, we look at what stands out. There is no right or wrong way to annotate text unless because I don't put the tone in terms of what the paragraph is doing. You can start with paraphrasing complex parts. You can start by check marking things that you agree with. You can do a question mark by things you don't understand. I tell my students to circle words you don't know. And then my personal thing is notice and wonder. So when I'm reading, I put things I notice and then I kind of mark and comment on them on the left. And then on the right, it's I wonder this, questions from that. What qualifies something as an AP reading? So I think they've kind of just, we'll talk about that here in just a minute when we get to rhetorical analysis. Realistically, anything can be something that's going to be read in your AP class. Typically, you would hope it would be something at a much higher level, but like we're going to read, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus in my class, and we're going to analyze that, and they're going to see how complex it is. But you could also do that with a song that comes on the radio. You can actually do an AP reading comparing the theme of Elsa in Frozen 1 to the theme from Elsa in Frozen 2 and how they, no spoilers, how they compare and contrast. So you can kind of see that. Diction and wording within a passage. That is going to be a challenge. If vocabulary is a challenge for you, I would focus on etymology, looking at parts of words and learning parts of words like the Greek and Latin roots. That can really help you. There are also books out there, 100 words every AP student should know, 100 words every high school student should know, all of those sorts of things. All right, bad at comprehension. Practice, that's it. Sometimes, even like to this day, I can be reading something and then I'm like, I don't even know what I just read. So that's something that you're going to have to do more of. Also, when you're practicing that, what you want to do is look at the model essays and read the passage, write down your thoughts on what you think it's saying, and then read the high scoring essays and see if you were right. That's another good way of doing it. So I have trouble staying focused on long, uninteresting passages. Yes, that is a true thing. That's actually a testing strategy. We've got to build that academic stamina. I tell my students to start with the ones that are at least remotely interesting, and try to go through there. Is it best to read the whole passage and then answer? Ooh, okay. Is it best to read the whole passage and then answer the questions? Or is it better to read as we answer the questions? I think that that's a strategy question, and you're going to have to figure out what works for you. I have some students who swear to me that they never read anything more than the first sentence and then scan the middle of the paragraph and then the last sentence of every paragraph. I have some who read the questions, but not the answers to every single one. I have some who read the passage, like scan the passage quickly, and then answer the questions along the way because the questions typically go in order of that. So realistically, you're going to have to just practice it and figure out what works for you personally as you're doing that. The best way to find the main idea. So what I do, I tell my students, like when you're struggling with that, go through and try to identify the topic of each of the parts, and then figure out how do those come together to get to the main idea or the central idea, and that will help you a lot. Do I have a list of what to look for when reading? Well, we have some questions that we can ask. I can definitely make a note to add those to the email. They do come from Language and Composition textbook, so I can get that for you. The problem is it's such a huge long list, but you could use rhetorical aspects, or if you have a teacher that is using SpaceCat. I know a lot of people in the forum right now are using SpaceCat. And you probably had a teacher that was using like Soapstone or something like that too. So you get on that? You with me? All right. So all these are great questions. And I'm going to revisit these questions and make sure that I have done everything I can to answer that. So let's move right along, shall we? Staying focused is such a challenge sometimes. I totally understand that. All right. So multiple choice expectations. We had a lot, have a lot of stuff in here. Logistics, 45 questions in an hour, 45% of the total exam score. It's presented in 5 sets. Now, they're supposed to be shorter passages. Your teacher uses Soapstone. Yeah, that's an old school one, that one, and TPcast, things like that. Whatever you use that you're familiar with, stick with it and use it over and over and over so that you can get used to it and it becomes like second nature. Okay, so 23 to 25 reading questions are going to ask you to read and analyze nonfiction, and then 20 to 22 are going to be the read like a writer, and those are supposed to be like what you see on the SAT. So again, we do not have a full-length practice exam from the College Board just yet, but when we do, I'm sure you're going to see it from your teacher. For right now, I don't think it's a bad idea to use the existing multiple choice. So if your teacher's doing that, they're doing the right thing. All right, so you have the CED outline. That was that very first link. It lets you see the skill categories so you can identify where you stand on the skills when you're using AP Classroom, and then you can connect that to what you need to work on. So that gives you a lot of extra information there. Okay, sample question stems. So you might see things like, which of the following best describes the writer's exigence? I would bet anything that there's a question using that exact stem because exigence is new this year and a lot of people have kind of been freaking out about it. So definitely look at that. In the opening paragraph, the writer contrasts blank primarily to. Note that that's contrast is one of the modes of development or one of the rhetorical modes. So you can see that they're looking at the way that those are used in the text. The lines could be used to support which of the following claims. Which if the following, if placed blank, would capture the audience interest and provide effective introduction to the topic. The writer wants an effective transition. Which one achieves that purpose? So you kind of have some sample questions there in the CED to help you out. And so we have some strategies for you. We have suggested that you read the provided background knowledge and you start thinking about the rhetorical situation. If you know that they're going to ask you about the rhetorical situation, and they are because they explicitly wrote that on the skills, make sure that you look at them. Annotate the text, bracket it, put chunks around shifts. When you read something and you're like, he's moved on, then you want to note that shift because typically when there is a shift, there is a question about that shift. When you are looking at the texts, consider starting with the easier of the two for the nonfiction, and then the easier of the ones for the reading like a writer. I call them like the rhetorical grammar aspect. Text difficulty can be determined by the year of publication, organization, the paragraphing, or even your personal preference. So that's what you were saying, Vanessa, about you just don't even care. This is the dumbest thing. So you really kind of got to trick yourself a little bit, but find the one that you can focus on. And as long as you don't mess up with the bubbles, you should be good for that. Process of elimination is your friend. If any part of the answer choice is off, it's all wrong, okay? And then when you're out of time on your passage, do a letter of the day, like figure it out. Note that the last 2 minutes, you're just gonna put letter B all the way down, okay? So, that was super fast. But I bet you have questions. What questions or comments or concerns do you have about multiple choice? Okay, so a question that has popped up is, will Fiveable be hosting full-length practice exams as the AP exam date gets closer? So I'm going to say we are definitely going to be doing review activities to help prepare for the exam. I think that we can use released practice exams. However, College Board does have secure documents that we can't use. So your teacher could use them in the classroom, but I don't think that we can actually use those secure documents in this interface. So that I don't know about how that's going to look. But we are definitely working on it, and we have got some fantastic creators with us so that we can build samples that we can use with you guys. So we're definitely going to be modifying and making sure that we're meeting your needs there as well. So answer that question there. All right. Okay, so we had a few more questions. What do you do if you have no clue what the question is asking? You praise who you praise. You're going to have to try. Don't focus on what you don't know, because that's going to get in your brain and you can't have that happen. Focus on what you do know. Look for the pieces, see what you can figure out. Realistically, if you can believe in yourself, I genuinely believe that the right thing is going to happen. Don't let the anxiety of, I don't even know what the question is asking me, shut you down, because that's definitely happened to me too. Question is it better to skip the question and come back, or is it just guess and move on? So it is timed. I tell my students that you need to identify your time bandits, and if the question is going to take more than a minute or two, you could probably just move on, like letter of the day and move on. But I have some students who, if they can narrow it down to 1 or 2, then they will put like a dot inside the bubble for wherever it is. Like if they think it's A or B, they'll put a dot in one of those 2, and then at the end, they'll just come back and bubble whichever one they came up with. And so that's a strategy. Pacing. Typically, I would say 8 to 12 minutes per passage, but that is changing because the test is changing, and I'm not really sure right now, but I think that's still a good thing. So, teacher hasn't presented us with anything about the multiple choice. What should I know first? You can do it. That's the first thing. You can do it. And the next thing is you're going to have to read the passage, and you're going to have to process through those answer choices. Are there review books or materials available online? Okay, so everybody right now is trying to make the review books for all of this stuff with the 1920 changes, okay? So we here at Fiveable hear you. We're working on it, and we're trying to get there. If the question asks us to look at paragraph 3 or line 27, should we only be looking? Yes. That's why, so earlier when I said that when you have, I wish I had, printed out a test. The passage is on this side. I don't know if it mirrors it for you guys. I think it's mirroring it when I look at it. But you've got the passage, and then you've got the questions over here. So in general, if you read and annotate on this side, only through questions 1 through 6, or however many questions are on here, when you flip the page over, the passage is repeated here. So don't start at the very beginning. Start where you left off on the previous page and go through there. look at the pieces where it tells you to. I have a student who last year told me that his strategy was only to answer the questions that had a specific line reference or a specific section reference. That was his strategy, and he did decently. So I definitely think when it tells you to look somewhere, you look right there at it. That is helpful. There are some, however, where you kind of got to look a little bit past it. So really, you've got to be able to know enough about the text itself to process of elimination, all those other questions. Are there steps to approach these? Steps for the multiple choice, I think. So we use the like the RAMS method. So you can kind of read it, annotate it, go through and make the best choice using the process of elimination, and then circle it and move on. So practice though. The more you practice, the more you're gonna get. And when you practice, don't just practice, like look at what you got wrong and understand why. Even if your teacher doesn't let you do test corrections or anything like that, you learn more when you have a mistake than you do otherwise. All right, are you ready? Okay, general writing things that we talked about, okay? General writing, AP writing questions. The first thing is always bat the prompt, always. Look at the background, what's the context that you're given, what's the advice? They say, so I should probably do this. And then identify your task. What am I doing? Because sometimes you have a question that has other parts embedded. You almost always need to address the effectiveness. You're going to have to look at what is the purpose? What are they doing? How does that come across? So look at what that is and address it accordingly. So talked about batting the prompt. And this one came from Brandon. Brandon's suggestion is that when you go through and you're reading and you're preparing to write, you identify what is present in the text, you decide why the author is using it and how you're going to categorize it, whether it's chronologically or intended purpose or anything like that, and then you analyze how it impacts the audience, how it influences that purpose or that meaning that you're trying to accomplish. And from those parts, you kind of put it together, and you're going to be able to identify which ones you're going to talk about, because you don't want to talk about like the little piddly ones. Lots of people use rhetorical questions. I'm sure there's something more in there than that. So that was one of our strategies that we looked at. Another strategy that we looked at for reading and pre-writing was a thesis statement. Solid, defensible. It has to be arguable. And with the new rubrics, it has to analyze the writer's rhetorical choices. So by doing this thing, the author asserts whatever in order to tell me what the audience movement is. Okay, so it's kind of a general rule of thumb. Outline, you just kind of want to put your little bullet points there. This came from Catherine, by the way. I can't remember if I said that. And then the big idea, that's going to be kind of what you put. It's the lasting impact of overall. If you're not really sure and you don't know, we can use the old-fashioned diddles. Diddles would be, you talk about diction and the imagery. Put those together, look at what's happening, how do they support tone, how does syntax support the tone, all of those things. Imagery, you can talk about the effect of the images that are being discussed or that are being described. You can look at figurative language here, all of those things. The details, you can look at the information that's been presented or left out intentionally, and then of course the language. So that's the overall characteristics of the words that are involved. And when you're looking at language, this is where you start to look for those very specific rhetorical devices. And then the final one would be syntax. And if you're not very comfortable with addressing the syntax, then you can look at this shift. So it's the structure of the words in the sentences and the changes that are presented in the text. Anybody's teacher doing diddles? All right. So another thing that we looked at is thesis statement help, okay? You guys had a lot of questions on this. So use the prompt to help you decide how to build the thesis as a statement that's related to the topic, that answers the expected question, and that makes the claim others might dispute. So you can sometimes, like, I don't want you to do this exactly, but sometimes what you can actually do is look at the look at what's happening in the text, and then from there, or look at what's happening in the prompt and in the text, and then from there you can take that question and turn it into a sentence starter. So we looked at the Gandhi example. You might say, Gandhi hopes to achieve whatever by using this thing, okay? It's generally presented as a single sentence in your first paragraph. I think that this one, from what we seem to be getting out of the forums, it seems like there's going to be a little bit more leniency here with your thesis statement, but never, ever, ever say, I think, or I'm going to explain, because that is not great, okay? In fact, that's not even good. Next piece would be open thesis statements are vague because they do not give the exact roadmap for the paragraph, okay? So they don't actually look at the specific choices the writer has made. Now, a closed thesis statement will have the stops on the way. So the author uses anecdotes, statistical information, and an overwhelming satirical presence to get the audience to decide to donate money to agencies that can feed children. Anyone know what text that is? Singer's Solution to World Poverty. Lots of teachers use it. 2005, I think, question 3. Okay. So that's a lot on thesis statements. In the past, I always recommended an open thesis statement. This year, given the changes in the sample writings, closed all the way, okay? So your teachers might be telling you, don't say because blank, blank, and blank. Okay, I understand that. I see where it's coming from, but you want to make sure that you're identifying those writer's choices right there from the beginning in the rhetorical analysis. You want to give that, what are you going to talk about in your body paragraphs in the very beginning, because that's what the rubric said to do, okay? All right, sophistication. See, I have a question. All right, so the question is, in the thesis statement, should you include all of the points that you're going to cover explicitly, like X, Y, and Z? Currently, that is my recommendation. Yes. You can give the specific strategies that are being used, or you can almost be vaguely specific, if that makes sense. Like you could say, uses a variety of figurative language. And then in your paragraph, you talk specifically about the types of figurative language. So you want to be specific in terms of this is what we're looking at, because of the fact that the rubric says the writer's choices, that you need to explicitly address those. So. All right. Close that down. Okay. So sophistication is the process or the result of becoming more complex, developed, or subtle. So it's going to look like some precise language. It's going to look like intentional, varied sentence structure, addressing multiple perspectives throughout the whole text, and then developing like a nuanced position. Like, what is that extra piece that you can kind of throw in that very subtly says, I actually know what I'm talking about, and I'm a really good writer. So you kind of see that brought in. In the forum, it seems, so sophistication is either like you got it or you don't. It's a 1 or it's a 0. The growing consensus right now is that solid is going to be a 130. That is what it seems to be based on the commentary in the College Board forums, and in some of the conversation from some of the webinars that I've attended. I am hesitant to say that because typically I feel like that's not something that they put out there until after the test, but just to kind of give you an idea, I do think you should work to increase your sophistication, but at the same time, you kind of want to keep in mind what that looks like. So this is the rubric with the scoring notes, and you can kind of see how you get it and how you don't. So the thing that's going to be the easiest is that if you earn it, you can demonstrate sophistication of thought or complex understanding or any of those pieces. You can explain the purpose and the function of the passage's complexities or the tensions, and then have a style that's consistently vivid and persuasive throughout the student response. One thing that I really would want you to think about would be, with the idea of sophistication, this is a college level course, right? So to get sophistication, it needs to look like a college student wrote it. So. Questions on that? All right. Last thing here, tips for using the model essay in general. Start with the oldest samples to work your way forward. 2007, there was a major test change at that point in time too. So there's that. Rotate based on your syllabus so that you can make sure that you want to make sure that you're going with what your teacher's going with. Some teachers, like, they'll start with rhetorical analysis and then they go to argument and they go to synthesis. Some do like 3 weeks on one, 3 weeks on one, 3 weeks on one. Some I've seen that they just kind of do whichever one they're doing at the moment. So try to figure it out based on the syllabus that your teacher has given you. Print it out, mark it up. Always annotate the text, okay? And that includes the stimulus text. And then look at the sample essays. Highlight the thesis statement and the topic sentences in yellow. Highlight direct quotes in pink and the analysis in green. Transitions and concluding sentences make orange. These colors are going to make like a stoplight, right? So when you turn it in, like, you go at a stop when it's green. So you want to make sure you have more green on your page than anything else. And so this is what I call the stoplight test. Give yourself the stoplight test. Do this to those model essays that are on that College Board website that I gave you the link to, and that will be a huge help. Some of you said that you felt like you were struggling with the comprehension of it. Compare your thinking and your analysis to the higher essays, and then to even the chief reader's feedback. That'll be helpful too. A question popped up: which essays have everyone learned already? So that does kind of vary, again, like I said, with the teachers. Another question that popped up is, will essays be fact-checked if you include a statistic? Well, I am going to refrain. Brandon, do you have input on that? Do you want to say? I have a friend who's a reader, and she said that she did not have that experience, but she didn't want to say that anybody couldn't do that. Like, there's nothing, they do have something in there so that if they need to look something up, they can. If they question it, the scorers question it, they'll go to the table leader and kind of move on from there. Okay, how do I improve my sophistication? You're going to have to work on it. And actually, the more that you read, the more that you're going to get, the more you're going to figure out. Because if you look at it and you read it, your brain unconsciously analyzes the writing patterns that you see, and you're going to replicate what you see a little bit more as well. So you kind of have that there. Have another question. What do we need to do in order to get the sophistication point? So we have that. I'll come back over here to that real quick for you. So realistically, what you want to look at on this is making sure that you have looked at the significance or the relevance of the writer's rhetorical choices. Of course, you have to address the rhetorical situation. You have to show that you truly understand not only the text itself, but the situation surrounding that. And then you want to explain the purpose or the function of the passage's complexities or tensions. So you want to go into detail about why it matters. It's not just what is happening, it's why is it happening, why does it matter? And then that how aspect as well. How does it actually impact the movement? How does it get there? So, and then of course use a good writing style. Don't use slang, don't use anything like that. Vary your sentence structures. That can also really help you with it. Okay. So the question now is, do you have to bring in outside information, like your knowledge outside of the given passage about the topic? So you can. The thing that I would want you to think about with that is the benefits of it. Like, what is the benefit of having all of that extra in? Because I have seen some students who've come in and they've said, well, I knew that it was about, I really knew the context. I knew that it was about this. And this happens with the letters, like the John Adams letter. And they're like, and I explained the whole context. And then I realized that I had 40 minutes left and I still had 2 essays to write. So if you're spending a whole lot of extra information on that, it's probably not the best idea. But I mean, a little bit's probably not bad. So what are some good power verbs to replace uses and to? Restructure the sentence. Start with by, tell what is being done, comma, the author demonstrates this. Okay, so try to use that structure, vary that syntax. That will help as well. You can also word it to say things like the impact of blah, blah, blah is simple, colon, here's what the impact is. You kind of have those pieces there together. Okay, so there's actually a really good book out there. It's called They Say, I Say. And that will give you a lot of structures and supports to kind of help you out with that. Another thing would be looking at the modes of development. There are some pretty good strategies that can help you out with those as well, using sentence frames and modeling your thoughts after those others. All right, so I know we're at the 1 hour. I sent a message to see if it's okay if we go over, if you guys are still with me, because it looks like you are. But what questions do you have about AP writing in general? Okay, so the question is, how many essays, practice essays, would you suggest that we take on our own, and how would we grade ourselves? So realistically, because of the fact that the rubrics have changed, that's going to be a little bit harder for you to do this year in particular. I think that it's a good practice to kind of break it up. Like, if you know that you have a lot going on at school, like right now, it's probably finals for you for this semester. And so you probably have a lot going on. Maybe you don't do anything the week of finals, and maybe the week before finals, when you're like cramming in all your other subjects, maybe what you do is, instead of writing the whole essay, you read the text, you do the Ida, you do the Toby, and just have your like bullet outline, and then compare that to what the full essay would be. I personally look at having my students write. Some people say it's not enough. We look at about every 3 weeks that something is turned in. Now, they do get to write more than that, get to write. I know they don't feel that way, but so we kind of look at that. But I try really hard in the first semester, I should say. Now, second semester is a little bit different. Second semester, I feel like an essay every other week is solid. So is there a rough estimate of how long you should be spending reading and analyzing versus writing and proofreading? So I tell my students that you do 3 minutes to bat the prompt, and then I want them to come up with a plan in no more than 5 minutes. That's going to be 8 minutes. That gives you 32 minutes to write and to go back and revise if you're going to revise. Okay. So if you look at it and you do 25 minutes, you try to get through your body paragraphs and go through it that way, then you have a good chunk of time at the end to go back and revise a little bit. They are graded as a draft, so that at least does help you out a little bit. What can I do to gain a point for sophistication other than vocabulary and diction enhancement? Really demonstrate the mastery of the text itself, the rhetorical situation, and analyze it at a higher level. What you'll see as you look at the model essays is a lot of students pick the same piece of evidence over and over and over again, like across the entire country. It'll be, and people alarmingly picked this line for evidence of whatever, like the chief reader will say that, and you'll see that when you look at it. So that is something to think about, because if you can pick a rhetorical strategy that's at a higher level, you can explain the what and the why and the how at a higher level with a higher diction, with a higher syntax, then you should be good on that. What's the difference between a good and great thesis? What stands out to graders? Clarity. Explicitly saying what the writer's choices are, why the writer's choices are, and how they impact the movement. That's what you really want to look at with that. We have two, 2018 and 2019 right now. We have those two passages or those two tests that they have graded on the new rubric. So we don't have a lot of support on that currently. But it does look like the majority of the students who completed it received credit for the thesis statement. So it kind of looks like that's a pretty easy one. How can I avoid writer's block in the middle of an essay? The Toby. Do the Toby, because when you're brainstorming and you're getting your outline going, you can have just like little bullet notes. And then when you feel like kind of confused, come back to it. Another thing that you can do when you recognize a strategy is link it to a function. And when I say a function, I mean a rhetorical appeal. So like you notice this rhetorical thing. If it was pathos related, put a P. If it was ethos related, put an E. If it was some kind of logos, put an L. And then when you get lost in your writing, you can just remember, okay, I'm talking about the way that it affected emotion here. And you can kind of bring that in. Does spelling matter? Always. Yes, but I don't think that that's going to be the reason that you fail, because unless it is absolutely like you can't figure out what you're saying, it should be okay. No, don't end with a preposition. Your brain actually looks for the answer to that when you end with a preposition. I wouldn't do that. You want to remember that you're looking for a higher level of syntax, and the second part of the reading questions are now modeled after the SAT rhetorical strategies questions. So you want your writing strategies to model what you see in those questions. So does your teacher have a problem with that too? That's so funny. Do counter arguments really help, or will it just weaken my argument? How can the counter argument strengthen it? If you shut it down. If you shut it down. So do you remember when I asked you if a tiger or a polar bear would win? And then we had the one that was like, although they have sharper claws and teeth, that aspect, you kind of want to think about that. You want to shut it down. Some people might say blank, comma, however, the reality is, and then explain it. So you address it and you shut it down. That's a good way of doing that. Can you end with a rhetorical question? I think ending with one is a lot better than starting with one. I don't let my students start with a rhetorical question. I think that that's just not great at all. So, okay. All right, so I got confirmation. I'm gonna keep going if you guys are with me, if you wanna be with me. But I understand if you can't be with me anymore, because I do have more. If you're interested, but do you guys find the question and answer time good? This is the most involvement I've had on my stream, so I'm super excited about it. Okay, so let's look at the next part, which is the free response questions. Okay, so with the free response questions and the rubrics, I have some resources for you as well. But here are the logistics. You have 3 hours and, 3 questions in 2 hours and 15 minutes. The first 15 minutes, question and answer is a favorite part. That's awesome. It was a lot to try to fit in for a 1 semester review. You know what we need to do? We need to let you guys give us the questions in advance, and then we can build based on what you all ask. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? Okay, so if you're with me, that's great. If you can't be and you have to go, I totally understand that. All right, so free response. You've got 3 questions in 2 hours and 15 minutes. The first 15 minutes is a reading period. Don't waste that. Use that for the synthesis, okay? Look at those. It is 55% of your exam score. So knowing that, I would focus on the writing. And then, of course, the arrangement is 1 synthesis, 1 rhetorical analysis, 1 argument, and then you have the new analytical 141 rubrics. So, all right, synthesis showdown, because I am an English teacher. I do love me some alliteration, so I try to bring it in. Hopefully you like it. Bad puns are free. So it's going to be 6 to 7 texts, including 2 that are visual, and at least 1 will be quantitative with images or charts, okay? The reading text should be around 500 words each. Now, here is what I would say. You know, you have to do at least 3, right? Like you've got to cite at least 3. So I tell my students to cite at least 3, and then that doesn't count the visual. You should do that one. You can come up with something about that. Even if it's just like an in passing, I really think that you should always try for addressing that 4th one in there somewhere. So, synthesis essay expectations. This is what they say you need to do. And since they tell you what to do and they grade your paper, you should do it. First, respond to the prompt with a thesis that may establish a line of reasoning. Second, provide evidence from at least 3 of the provided sources that will support your thesis, okay? Indicate clearly what the sources that are used through direct quotation, paraphrase, or summary. Now, in the past, you've been able to say source A, source B, and then sometimes you can say Jones says whatever, or Kirk says whatever. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. One thing I would point out here with this concept of direct quotation is the more that you look at the model essays that have been released, the more you'll see that the higher scoring essays don't use long sections in quotes. They use small words and phrases in quotes, and that is actually embedded in your own writing. And that's another way of getting that sophistication point as you go through it. So they want you to explain the relationship between the evidence and the thesis that you have given. And then they want you to demonstrate the understanding of the rhetorical situation of the prompt that you've been given. And of course, use appropriate grammar and punctuation in communicating your argument. Now, I'm going to point out the use of the word argument here because this is what the course and exam description tells you that you have to have. So why not use an argument outline? So here are some synthesis strategies for you. First, process the prompt, okay? Paragraph 1 should give you the exigence of whatever you're looking at. Paragraph 2 is a stable prompt. It's going to tell you what to do. That paragraph 3 that had the important reminders, I don't think that's going to be there anymore. So you've got to look at 1 and 2 to see what you can get. Formulate your thoughts first. Figure out what your opinion is. And then build a thesis fill-in-the-blank template, okay? Now, I realize there are some teachers who absolutely would hate the next few things that I'm going to tell you. But this is what I tell my students, and I hope it makes sense. And if it doesn't, you ask me if you have any questions, okay? Once you have figured out what your thoughts are on this topic, how you feel, when you're reading, you're not looking at the rhetorical choices. You are looking at the logic, okay? So put a plus next to anything that's a pro, anything that goes with what you said, and then put a minus next to anything that's a con, anything that goes against what you think. You're not doing the rhetorical analysis, you're developing an argument. So look at it in terms of this is what my thought was, this agrees with me, this does not agree with me. I want you to note the statements, the ideas, and the observation that stand out. And then when it comes time for you to actually fill in the blank on that thesis statement template that I talked about, look and see where you have more marks and write that essay. If you have more positive things because those things agree with you, then you go with what you think. If you have more negatives because the evidence is completely, totally against you, write that even if you don't believe it, okay? Because it's about your argument and it's about your evidence. And I don't know about you guys, but I could write a better argument about why we needed school dress codes any day of the week in the inner city than I would want to actually wear a dress code, or a uniform or campus gear or whatever you want to call it. I didn't want that, but I knew that I could do a better job on the essay saying that we could because that's what the evidence suggested based on our experience where I was. So I understand that some people might say that that's not the greatest idea, but if you look at the evidence and you say, you know what, the majority of the evidence says this, go with what the majority of the evidence is. And then use both sides. So those things that went against you or those things that are on the opposite side. So if you decide to write on the negatives, use the positives as your counter or as your concession. And I'm going to say use at least 4 sources. Okay? All right. Consider the Aristotelian argument structure. First, introduce your issue. Next, explain the situation. Next, address the opposition. Now that can be just a simple little sentence, okay? Just like with the tigers. Although tigers have sharp claws and sharper teeth, the polar bear has more mass, okay? So you can be short. Present your evidence and then draw a conclusion with your call to act, okay? That's going to be the part that kind of lets you go out with a bang. So this same process is actually if your teachers are using the classical argument structure, the Aristotelian argument structure, the Rogerian, we talk about it at the very beginning in my class, but we don't actually do it because with the Rogerian, you're kind of supposed to suggest this middle ground aspect with it. And this presents a very clear passage from the issue to the situation to the opposition of evidence, and then to the conclusion. And bonus points if you intentionally plan your modes of development. You can introduce the issue by defining it. You can explain the situation using a narrative anecdote. You can address the opposition with comparisons, causes and effects. You see where I'm going with this? You know it. Yeah. Okay. So that is the synthesis. And so next, the rhetorical recipe. Alliteration there. You have your nonfiction text, and then you analyze how the language choices contribute to the intended meaning and the purpose of the text. This one is always my favorite because I don't know, I'm like such a nerd when it comes to words, but I love the rhetorical analysis. So what is that recipe for success? Here it is. Now we here at Fiveable have focused on the rhetorical analysis greatly, so I kind of gonna go fast through this just because you can, if you were following with us on the streams, you should have it. And of course you have these slides as well. So the FRQ2, someone wanted to know what these were. FRQ2 will always be the rhetorical analysis, and that's going to be nonfiction prose around 600 to 800 words, and you're going to analyze the author's rhetorical blank. Rhetorical choices, rhetorical functions, faculties, devices, whatever, okay? You have to respond with a clear thesis of the writer's rhetorical choices. So, thesis statement, it tells you right here, using the rhetorical choices, okay? You have to put that in there. Next, use evidence to develop and support your claim. So remember way back in the beginning when we were looking at the AP reading, we talked about Pullman. Use Pullman to build your argument here. Have a claim, have your evidence, have your warrant, any concession, refutation, counter, whatever you need to put in there. That's a part of your commentary and your analysis. That's explaining this is why this piece of evidence supports this big picture thesis. So don't neglect a concluding sentence at the end of your body paragraphs. Next, demonstrate an understanding of the rhetorical situation. So of course, you want to make sure you do that. And then of course, the appropriate grammar and punctuation. So we talked about the rhetorical précis. This is a great structure for your introduction paragraph. So if you're going to do the rhetorical analysis essay, use the rhetorical précis. It's 4 sentences, or maybe it's fewer than 4 sentences. Maybe you put these 4 parts into the other sentences. You've got what it is, how it's given, why it's given, and to and for whom it is intended. So you have your thesis point with the solid defensible thesis that analyzes the rhetorical choices. So you've got to make sure you address what that looks like, okay? Big problem that I see here is that you guys are so good at summary that you summarize a lot of what's in there, but we don't get to see that other piece. Okay. Sample body paragraphs. You've got a topic sentence with your transition, okay? The author begins with or by, and then make your claim about what that is, okay? Then give a specific example, something that is woven in. So not like, 13 words in a row, but 3 or 5 are probably okay. Bring it together. Discuss the strategies used in the beginning section, support it with the text, and then move through it in chronological order. You can organize it by the rhetorical purpose of each section, so you have those ideas. The next thing that we talked about would be additional paragraphs. As a minimum, I would say you need at least 2 body paragraphs. Topic sentence would be after blank, the author moves to, and then talk about another strategy, okay? So building off the strategy he or she used to begin, and then you just move into another one. So you have that natural transition. Again, explicit textual evidence, you weave into what you're trying to say, okay? Questions on that? All right, argument assault. That was the best I had. Okay, so expectations are going to give you a short literary or rhetorical concept or idea, and then you argue the position. I have students who are always so excited about this, but what happens is we get overwhelmed with our emotion, and then we start just writing how we say, and it ends up being like this major diatribe that doesn't actually present evidence. It's like that essay, How to Say Nothing in 500 Words or More. That happens to us sometimes. So you want to make sure that you have a clear thesis that has that line of reasoning put in there. You want to make sure that you have evidence that's going to help you to develop and support your claim. And I have, big surprise, another acronym to help you with that. Then you want to explain how the evidence you've presented supports the thesis that you have made. And of course, understand the rhetorical situation and use grammar and punctuation as well. So, argumentative assault, you have to have that clear, defensible position. It has to be something that can be argued, okay? Earlier, someone said, is this a claim of fact? Well, it's not necessarily a claim of fact, but it's presented as a fact, okay? So it doesn't have to be a fact. It has to be arguable. Then you want to provide solid evidence. Give backing where you can, okay? You're going to give your claim. You're going to give your evidence. That extra piece can only help you in the realm of it. And then address the counter and concede when needed. There are going to be some things that are glaringly against whatever you're trying to say. So address those in a healthy manner. Don't avoid addressing a counter because you think it's going to weaken your argument. Just try to shut it down a little bit, okay? Now, you obviously wouldn't want to say something like, although, I don't know, like I'm thinking about the Singer's solution to poverty again. Although Singer points out that $20,000 a year of a $50,000 salary should be able to be donated to other students, the reality is people aren't going to do that, okay? So you can kind of see how you would address that. And then, of course, that device that I promised you, it's called Rehugo. A lot of teachers will have you do like Rehugo journals or projects, that sort of thing as you get closer. So basically what Rehugo is it's an idea of places where you can get good high quality evidence. So if you're not really sure, you can think, okay, what is something I've read that addresses this concept? What is something from the entertainment world that addresses this concept? What is something from history that addresses this concept? Is there some kind of universal truth that addresses it? Something from government that maybe I know, or even a personal observation. So you want to give your piece of evidence and give a little bit of backing to that. Why should we trust this piece of evidence? Why is this piece of evidence strong? And using Rehugo to help you identify those elements, that's a huge help. Okay, questions? All right, reminding you again, just like with the synthesis, use the Aristotelian structure. Introduce your issue. This is what they say. Explain the situation. Okay, this is what they say. This is the way it should be. Here are all of these pieces that we need to consider. Here's the rhetorical situation. Address the opposition. Present your evidence. Draw your conclusion and end with that call to act. Okay? So follow that same structure here because it really kind of does the same thing. So, in general, your row A is your thesis, your row B is evidence and commentary, and then your row C is sophistication. Now, the thesis statement and sophistication, either you have it or you don't. That's great. And then with evidence and commentary, again, it does go up to 4, but it seems like there is a lot of 1, 3, 0s in the in what we've been given. So we have that as an option as well. So, giving you a couple of resources here. You ready? All right. Here you go. Now you got them. You got the rubrics. Isn't that exciting? I think it's helpful to have the rubrics. This is actually the College Board one, and this is the new one. But what I want to highlight is over here on the side, over here on the side, you have the like 2.A, 4.A. Those are the actual skills that align with what you're doing. So when your teacher is giving you your standards and objectives, those are the pieces that you're going to see there. So, all right, friends, do you have any questions about the FRQs? Anybody have any questions? This does bring us to the end. So it's your last opportunity for question and answers for today. Okay, question that popped up. What is the best way to phrase the call to action aside from just saying we should all? Realistically, you can easily do something like, there is clearly no other option. And then put whatever it is that you're trying to say down there. You can use this idea of we with the call to action because you're trying, essentially you're saying this is the only option. This is what we have to do. So you want to make sure that you've kind of addressed that in there somewhere, but you kind of don't want to say we because often you're not addressing the reader in your writing. So that's something to think about. It is fine if we do not have a conclusion, right? I'm gonna go with not anymore. Under the old rubric, it did say like a concluding segment on the rubrics, but on this one, it doesn't necessarily do that. So I would definitely not, I wouldn't avoid it. I would at least have a sentence or two down there because that can help you with your sophistication point. I would not avoid it. But you also, I see this question here too, how do you make an effective conclusion? You also don't want to just like repeat the same thing that you said in your introduction. So in general, you can kind of like do the opposite. So you would have your thesis statement, restate it, don't repeat it, restate, you say the same thing with different words, kind of different ideas, and then kind of progress through to that call to action there at the end. But I would not skip a conclusion, not anymore. So can you explain the rhetorical analysis again? Yes. So in terms of just in general what rhetorical analysis is, so rhetorical analysis, you are essentially analyzing what the speaker has done in order to effectively win over the audience. Okay, so how do you get from this point through to the end and achieve your purpose and get the audience to do what you want them to do? And sometimes you might tell them little stories. Okay, so for example, like a rhetorical analysis is think about an argument that maybe you got into with a sibling. You say, why did you do that? And then pretty much anything they say is not good enough. Well, why would you do that? Why would you do that? That's what rhetorical analysis is. Why did the author do this? What was the point of it? How does it work? How does it impact it? So that's a piece of that rhetorical analysis process. You're looking at what are they trying to say and how are they saying it? Why are they saying it that way? Does that help? If you're a Plus member, we have we have a lot of streams on those, and we have like one for introduction paragraphs, one for body paragraphs, one for conclusion paragraphs. So there's a lot there as well. All right, I struggle a bit more. I struggle a bit with universal truths. Can you explain what they are? So the idea of a universal truth is kind of like things that we assume it's going to be that way. A penny saved is a penny earned. Like, I hate that one. That's a terrible one. But things like that. So looking at what we all consider like morality or ethics, things that are just versus unjust, things like that would be your universal truths. But you do have several pieces with Rehugo. So if universal truths don't work for you, you can use something else. I have some students who use this, who actually look at that who look at the universal truths from the Bible and use that too. So, all right, if we were to be on paragraph 3 and the suggested time frame for that particular essay question is over, do you suggest moving on to the next essay or finish the current? I think that if it were me, I'm on paragraph 3 that says I'm on my second body paragraph. I would continue that paragraph, and then I would have a very short conclusion, and I would try to make the other ones a little bit quicker. You don't have to do the FRQs in the order that they are in the booklet. So if you look at it and you know that you tend to spend longer on something else, then I would just keep that in mind as well. So, uh-oh. What's going on here? There we go. Brought it back. Not sure what that was about. Okay. Oh, a couple more questions popped up. I'm not a Plus member. How can I get those resources? So the streams, the older streams, are not available without being a Plus member at this time. Now we are working on the blog and some of those different resources. So that would be something to think about. I will send you all of the resources that we do tonight, so you'll have them. Is there a reason that you're not a Plus member? I'm just curious. You can type it in another box. I'm just curious. How many of you guys are a Plus member, or are you not Plus members? I'm also struggling with the rhetorical essay. I can identify the writer's rhetorical strategies, but I just can't put everything onto paper. You know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like you're focusing on things you can't do. Let's focus on what you can do. If you can identify the rhetorical strategies, then you can also, if you can identify the rhetorical strategies, then what you want to look at is what's the point of doing it. When you look at for example, let's say that you want to go to a raging party on Friday night that's in the woods and there are not going to be any adults there, and you don't know a lot of the people who are going. Are you going to tell your mom that? Probably not. Like, you might say, hey, I'm going to go to a party, but you're not going to be like, it's in the woods, there's no adults, and there's probably going to be a lot of people and a lot of bad things there. Because if you said those things, they wouldn't let you go. But you would kind of plan your game a little bit better. You would kind of look at what you do tell versus what you don't tell, why you say it in a certain way. And that's what you're looking at with the rhetorical analysis essay as well. I understand, Stephen. I got you. I understand that. But you've been with a lot of our active streams too, so that's been helpful, I think, for you. Do you find it helpful? Do you find our streams helpful, Stephen? Right. Anyone have any other questions? That's so good, Stephen. I am so happy to hear that. We've been really trying to work to build up our participation and our following a lot. So I love seeing some of you guys that I've seen a few times before. Well, Owen, okay, so the question was, when will the next AP Lang stream be? And, you know, it's the Christmas break, or we've got the holiday season coming up. You guys have your final exams. You don't really want to think about us. And we are looking at some different ideas to make the streams more what you guys want and what you guys need. So I don't know right this second. I don't know how to answer that yet. I do know that when you're on Fiveable, you can, you know, ask that, and you can look at what those look like and how you would put that in. So, all right. Other questions? Anything at all? Maybe not just the FRQs. All right, that looks like we're about there. Any last minute tips? Oh my, have faith in yourself. That would be it. I would just say you have to believe and you have to try. Like, if you're just doing what you're doing in the classroom and you're hoping that you're going to get by, that's probably, it's going to help you some, but it's not going to help you as much as it could if you're going to be willing to do it on your own. That doesn't mean that every single day you have to read an extra essay in an AP textbook. But if you expose yourself to strong writing, and then you're thinking about why the person is saying what they're saying, what the person is saying, how it's impacting it, then you are going to get in the process of analyzing those texts on a regular basis. You can actually do that in all of your classes. So for example, if you're in AP US History, look at that. Like, I had one of my students told me that he didn't realize this is awful, but like, he didn't realize how biased some media outlets were until he started taking my class. And now he finds himself looking up a specific current event and then comparing the way it's addressed on all of these different media things. And if that's what helps you to analyze it, then that's a great strategy. So realistically, believe in yourself. Read often, read things you enjoy, challenge yourself with things that are at a higher level than you're comfortable with, because you're going to grow, and really apply what you've learned in all of these circumstances. If you have questions, ask. I'm on Twitter at Kirk's Corner. You can ask me, you can send me a direct message. any of those things you can use as an option. So you didn't know about us until you saw us on Twitter. Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much for saying that. She said that this is my first stream and I didn't know about you until I saw something on Twitter. Unfortunately, I wasn't here from the start, but I'm grateful to have the opportunity now. And yes, and I do send out an email at the end of all of my streams. So it'll actually take a little while for the stream video to download and for me to be able to put it up. So it might not be until tomorrow, but yes, I will send out a video, or I will send out an email. You will not have the stream itself, but you will have the resources in there, and that will be helpful to you. So, all right. I think that's everything. Have we answered it all? Ooh, what books do you recommend for break? Okay, super nerd over here, but I have a few books that I read all the time. Don't Hate Me, but The Great Gatsby. It's beautiful. I love it. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Okay, there's that. But then the other thing that I recommend right now is Thank You for Arguing What Aristotle, Abraham Lincoln, and Homer Simpson Can Teach Us About Rhetoric. That's a great book. You should get it. I think the other day I actually checked, it was on sale like for $10 or $11 on Amazon. It's a great book. It's very humorous. I happen to like it. How to Argue with a Cat is also good. If you have cats, you'll get it. If you don't have cats, I don't have cats. I have dogs. But I was able to pick up on it because I had that connection with them as well. I do have a list of recommended reading of nonfiction text that are recommended through AP Lang teachers over time. So I can send that to you. I think that that would be helpful. If you're interested, I can add that to the resources as well. So. Okay. What about me? Do you have a book for me? What book would you want me to read? Okay, you guys can think on that. All right. I will definitely do that. The Hate You Give. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you recommended that. That's a good book, isn't it? Yes. Oh. I had a moment there. Okay. Oh, I have another question. See what it is. Which AP prep books would you recommend? Okay, Stephen, I have no idea. How do you say that last name? That's crazy. Okay, which AP prep books would you recommend? Right this second, none of them, because you're going to spend money on them, and they're going to be based on the 1819 standards. So that's something I would definitely be hesitant to look at. With the new changes, you've got a lot of things that you can find online that are going to help you out, but I think also that the other companies are trying to like rush and get this stuff out to you. So if you're trying to be frugal with your money, I would definitely wait before purchasing a book, because again, the rubrics didn't even come out until the end of September. So how can a book that was on the shelves in August include those changes when the rubrics changed in September? So I wouldn't recommend those. All right. I see another book, A Muse of Fire. Okay, I'm gonna take a picture of these. Put them on my little Christmas wish list. There we go. All right, got it. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for being with me tonight. I look forward to seeing you in the next stream. Again, I'll send you an email, and then if you follow @ThinkFiveable, or you can follow me, Stephanie Kirk, I'm here for you. We'll do whatever we can to help you out, okay? So you guys have a great night. I will see you soon. Okay, I got it. I'm gonna get that book too. You guys have fun. I'll see you soon. Be looking for that email from me, okay?